Well, what we found in this trial is, first of all, that the vaccine has a profile which is very, very similar to other types of vaccines like this. It's well tolerated by the volunteers who took part in the study. And secondly, that we've met a really important milestone, which is showing that we've got strong immune responses, which we think are the sort that may be associated with protection. But of course, we've got to keep going with the clinical trials to really establish whether or not we can prevent the disease in our population with these strong immune responses.
Any evidence of side effects?
Just like with other vaccines of this type, there's some people feel a bit fluey after vaccination and have a sore arm, but there were no significant concerning side effects.
Yeah. And when you talk about the volunteers, how many involved in this?
Well, we had 1,077 people in this initial trial, but we've now moved on from these first trials and have almost 10,000 people now around the world who are in the later phase trials, where we're trying to establish whether or not the vaccine protects against COVID-19.
The role of antibodies and T cells, can you explain?
What we see that the vaccine induces are neutralizing antibodies. These are ones which neutralize the virus so it can't infect cells. And we've also seen that the vaccine generates T cells. And what the T cells do is they're a type of white blood cell which are able to recognize any of our cells that get infected with the virus and hopefully then destroy the virus that way. So there's two different mechanisms for being able to control coronavirus.
OK. Away from the science, a little bit to what the Prime Minister had to say earlier today, managing expectations, talking about maybe there not being a vaccine until next year, maybe even the year after that. I mean, I suppose on one level that's just politically prudent to try and make people realise there are potentially insurmountable clinical obstacles that lie ahead. How confident are you?
Well, I mean, I think we're at the first stage here in the development of the vaccine. We've shown that it makes the right sort of immune responses, but now we have to wait to see whether people in the trial are protected. And that is going to take some time because we have to wait for disease cases to occur in our population of people who are vaccinated in order to see whether we've got protection or not. And so it is difficult to predict exactly when we'll have that readout from the vaccine. So I think it's not necessarily caution to say that it may take a while. We just don't know the future. The lockdown here in the UK has been so successful that we managed to, thankfully, suppress the virus considerably, but it hasn't gone away. And so in time, we are going to get an answer to whether or not this vaccine works.
I mean, I suppose the argument could run, couldn't it, that you could go to countries where, for instance, in South America, where it is still more prevalent, to find more cases that could be studied?
Well, in fact, we are working in two other countries at the moment, in South Africa and in Brazil, where we have trials that are underway at the moment. And that's we sort of undertook this endeavour with our partners in other countries, and partly because we need to really know whether the vaccine can protect populations in different geographies. But clearly, as the number of cases rises in different countries, that's going to give us an earlier readout. And so it may be that we get our readout from outside the UK. It may be that over the next few months, it's actually from the UK that we get the first signal.
Andrew, I know you've got many calls on your time, but just one final thought, really, and it taps in a little bit to what a story we were covering last week about the pressure, really, that your scientists are under, not just to make sure that they produce a vaccine which helps people in this country and beyond, but also because this is such a prestigious scientific project that so many other countries and actors and players want a piece of it. Last week we were reporting cyber attacks, phishing attacks on scientists who really wanted to just concentrate on the science but perhaps having to change their passwords, etc. Finger being pointed at Russia. Just talk to us briefly about the sense of pressure that the people involved in this study are labouring under.
Well, I think with the team that are around me, 250 or so people working on these clinical trials and in the laboratory, we're actually all of us doing our day job. So in many ways, it's business as usual. But there is an additional pressure, and that is there's a real sense of urgency, but also a shared responsibility amongst the team to try and drive this forward. And there's no doubt that adds some additional pressure, but also, I think a real motivation to work hard and to put in the hours to try and get to the critical endpoint of understanding whether or not we can make a vaccine that's going to be successful in protecting populations all around the world.
Yeah, and in a word, big step forward today?
I think it's a big step forward, a critical milestone on the path, but we've still got a lot of work to do.